More than 1 million people are stuck in flats they can't sell or remortgage because of cladding that could be a fire risk. We've been keeping in touch with listeners who came to us hoping that we could help them get the information they need to sort things out. Shona Davidson and Rhiannon Shona both bought shared ownership flats in London from housing associations. They both now need to move. They can't sell because their flats have cladding. They wanted to rent out the flats, but their lender, Barclays, said no. Since they first spoke about that on You and Yours, Barclays has changed its mind. But things still aren't straightforward. I caught up with them again recently. Rhiannon told me what happened since she last spoke to us in January.
I'd been waiting for a response from the Financial Ombudsman for a few months. They'd warned it could take up to 5 months once I'd escalated my complaint within the Ombudsman. I then was contacted by them a couple of months later, a new investigator, who said that they'd been in touch with Barclays to follow up on this again. And the response from Barclays was slightly different this time. They said that I hadn't actually ever applied for consent to let, which totally baffled me because I'd made several phone calls about it and then followed Barclays' internal complaints process to complain about not getting the consent to let. So I couldn't understand that at all. But they sent me a form, Barclays sent me a form in the post to apply for consent to let, which I filled in and then got a response from them a month later to say that I had now been granted permission to let.
Shona, when you were on last time, you explained that you're a single mum with a baby boy. You had to give your job up. You were teaching because in the pandemic, the nursery's closed and there's no one else you can ask to look after him. You were buying a share in a flat in London through the Peabody Housing Association and you've been buying that for 17 years. What's happened in your case since we spoke last?
So it's been very slow moving. I'm still in the process of trying to sublet. The issue for me is because I'm not allowed to make any kind of profit is where do I and my son go? And also, how do we pay for it? So we thought we might go to my mum's, but it's transpired it's just not suitable for a 1-year-old, which we found out at Christmas. So I'm actually going to just try to move nearer to my mum. It's cheaper up there. And apply for universal credit on a new property because I'm not making any profit. I've been told I have to be in the property before I get a decision made on that, and it will be made by a case manager. So my life kind of turns on that.
And Shona, this whole thing's been a disaster for you, hasn't it? Because you've got quite a lot of capital tied up in that flat. You want to
absolutely
rely on universal credit to pay your rent.
I mean, my whole plan all along was I was going to sell. I was going to move to Norwich. I was going to buy a place in Norwich, have a very small mortgage, work a part-time to support my son and be able to afford nursery place that way. So, yeah, it's an absolute disaster and I'm in complete limbo. I've got to the point where I've been so overwhelmed for so long that it just feels normal to me. So I just don't know what to expect from day to day. So I just go along with whatever's going to happen. I try my best, but I kind of resigned myself to not really feeling like I have hardly any power in this situation at all.
Rhiannon, you have a tenant now. Can you see a brighter future for yourself?
So I'd really share Shona's feelings of just total helplessness in this situation. A year ago, my partner and I wanted to move to our first place together, get a little house out of London, look to start a family, and that was just totally put on hold by the decision that Barclays made at the time. So now it is brighter for us. It has meant that I've been able to get a tenant in the flat and we're now renting a little place in Derbyshire, which, from a mental health perspective is a huge relief to be out of that pressure cooker environment of the flat and all the stress that went along with it. But we have no prospect of buying a place together anytime soon because all my equity's in that flat, which is currently worth nothing, £0 valuation from Barclays. So I don't have any equity. And I'm also conscious I could be facing a £70,000 bill at some point in the future. So I'm just really hesitant to take the next step and get somewhere with my partner if actually in 2 years' time I'm facing a bill that might mean we need to sell that house or I declare bankruptcy in order to meet that payment. So it's still limbo. Consent to let has definitely improved my current position, but I don't have any certainty for my future whatsoever.
The new fire safety laws weren't passed last month that could still leave flat owners facing big bills for remedial work. So that, Rhiannon, is the 70,000 that you fear, is it?
Yes, so the costs for fixing my building, replacing the insulation and cladding, latest estimates are £9 million now. So there are 141 of us in the building. The maths is terrifying. When the government passed that bill, they rejected amendments made by both Conservative backbenchers and from the House of Lords that would have put in law to protect all leaseholders from facing those kinds of ruinous costs. And they made the decision not to include those amendments. So I am, and hundreds of thousands of leaseholders like me, still at the absolute mercy of the developers that built these faulty buildings. It's their goodwill whether they pay or whether we pay. And that's just the situation that we're stuck in at the moment.
Shona, do you have any idea what sort of costs you'll be facing?
Not as yet. Our building is due to be assessed beginning in November, and the assessment takes 6 months to complete. And only after that, when we get the result, will we have any idea. I've contacted Peabody Trust, my housing association, about this, about who will be liable for the costs. And because my building is under 18 metres, and therefore, in theory, the leaseholder is liable for that, Peabody have said they will explore all possible avenues before passing the costs on to the leaseholder. So, again, complete uncertainty around that.
That was Shona Davidson and Rhiannon Creasy. Well, the government told us they want the builders and building owners to make these flats safe without passing the costs on to the people who bought the flats. They told us they see that as fair to the flat owners like Shona and Rhiannon, but also fair to taxpayers. On Rhiannon's case, Barclays told us that giving her permission to sublet her flat is a one-off decision. They agree it's the best solution for her unique set of circumstances.